Well, hello and welcome to everybody who is joining us today, to our Team Shine members and to our Fairy God Boss community. We are so delighted to have you on today's session. If you could put in the chat for me, where are you joining us from while we have people log on? And I see a lot of you have already started. Seattle, Southern California.
Yeah.
A little jealous. Denver, Colorado, shouting you out. Nevada, I see you. St. James, New York, Amanda Wolfer. Hey, how you doing? That's my hometown. So excited to have all of you on. I know today is a really important session for a lot of you. And let me introduce myself and then my amazing panel who's with us today. I am Seema Bansali. I am the Vice President of Employee Experience and Inclusion for the Team Shine members on the call. And you'll hear us say TSMs a lot. Team Shine members on the call, I'm your TSM Experience and Inclusion Lead. I've been with the company 7.5 years as a part of the corporate affairs team and help to work on everything that makes you feel hopefully good in your day as a Team Shine member, partnering heavily with the HR team, the legal team, the business teams. Everybody comes together to create the community that Team Shine really loves. Now, today, we are really going to focus on setting boundaries and finding work-life balance. It's an elusive topic. We all do this a little differently, but I am joined by a stellar panel, and I am really excited to have them come and talk to us today. So, Sanchia, I'm going to start with you. Can you just give us a little introduction and background?
Yes, thank you, Seema, and hello, Team Shine and Fairy God Boss community. So excited to be here to talk about this important topic today. I'm Sanchia Patrick, and I lead what we call medical commercial marketing at Henry Schein, and responsible for the U.S. market, primarily focused on our customers and, of course, our sellers. So thank you so much. Happy to be here, Seema.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sanchia. I'm going to go to Lindsay next. Lindsay, could you please give us a little introduction?
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here. My name is Lindsay Laskowski, and I am the Zone General Manager at Henry Schein, covering the Midwest zone for our medical team. So I cover 10 states in the Midwest. And I have been at Henry Schein for 8 years in various positions, most recently as ZGM.
For those of you who don't know, that sales role is not an easy role. And so thank you, Lindsay. She'll bring a unique perspective to today's conversation, as will all of our panelists. And so Kristen Kapoor, maybe I can ask you to intro yourself and your role.
Of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Kapoor, as Seema said. I'm a VP and Senior Counsel in the Legal Department at Henry Schein. I'm actually the Labor and Employment Attorney for the company. I've been here 17 years already in a blink of an eye. A little bit about me. I am now, relevant to this conversation, I'm hybrid. So I only go into the office 1 day a week. I work from home 4 days a week. Very big change. I have 3 children. Their ages are 7, 13, and 18. And my husband is an attorney as well, and he works in the city. So that's a little bit of background for today's work-life balance to let you know what I'm dealing with on a regular basis.
Yeah, and so Kristen, that's terrific, because we're going to flip to you first. Today's session is about setting boundaries around your work-life balance. And this is not an easy topic. And I know a lot of you have joined in for tips. I'm going to start with saying I think there's a lot of ways to do this. And so I hope today, audience, you will glean from these professionals how they do this for themselves and what struggles they have. I mean, let's be open and honest about the fact that it's not easy. And so we're going to do that together. Kristen, given your role, and the fact that I know that people call you at all times with questions, legal questions, and you're on call a lot. How do you set boundaries for yourself, for your family, for your work life? I mean, there's a lot going on for you. Tell us a little bit about how you maintain your boundaries.
Sure. The first thing I will say is it is a work in progress. I think, some days are better than others, right? I try really hard to focus on it. I don't always achieve the balance that I hope to have. I actually think that boundaries are harder to set today than they were pre-pandemic. Before the pandemic, when I was in the office full time, I showed up at the same time every day. I left at the same time every day. And there was a little bit more respect around some of that time in the evenings, right? When you go home and you have dinner with your family and you're trying to get everybody ready. And to be fair, obviously, I did work later on my own time. But something has changed a little bit with the pandemic, where I think everybody feels that everybody's much more accessible. And so it is harder to set those boundaries, I will say. But I'm very, very fortunate. I recognize that not everybody has the flexibility that I do in terms of my role. And I think, to be honest, my tenure and just proving myself over time within the company, that I have the flexibility to do some, to flex my time a little bit. So I know it's important to me. And if I want to make sure that I make it to school, for 2 hours on a Friday afternoon for an event, I do that so that I can get, my work done at another time. The one thing that has really helped me do that is being honest with the people that I work with about, what's important to me. So I share with the team a lot about me personally, so they know my kids. They know that my kids get off the bus at 2:30, and my daughter is likely to walk in and pop in on that call and give me a hug, and that's okay. And they know a little bit about my schedule, just the time that I try and protect, in the evenings with my kids, and that they can find me as, sometimes it's easier to find me than others. And the best ways to work with me, might be to send me emails and not schedule meetings, because that's not going to be effective, right, in the way that I work. So they've also learned what's important to me and what's the best way to communicate with me.
I love that. And Kristen, we're going to get into that a little bit later too, around role modeling. But I love what you're saying here, because so important to protect time. I think protection is a big part of this. And setting boundaries can be hard for women. I mean, it really, I'm not saying it's not hard for everybody, but women in particular seem to struggle with the idea because we're responsible for so many lives, right? And so I want to turn a little bit to Sanchia. Sanchia travels a lot as part of your role, right? But you also have a team that you are very deeply engaged with. And so I always wonder, how do you do it? I mean, you have this team that you're always with, you travel, you also, not just the team that you support, that reports into you, but the rest of the medical team as well. How do you do it? Tell us a little bit about how you set those boundaries.
Thank you, Seema. And, team, I was sitting there listening heavily to Kristen, because as she said, I don't have it figured out. We all don't have it figured out. This is a evolving, ongoing, literally doing the work in progress type of topic that's worth doing the work, because as boundaries start to take shape in our lives, we get to do and be who we feel destined and called to be, right? So as Seema said, I don't have kids. I don't have, the 3 children that Kristen just mentioned, but I'm a wife. I'm a partner. That matters to me. I'm a friend. I'm a sister. I'm an auntie. I'm a team leader, right? And I feel really intense about the roles, as I'm sure you do, audience, but the various roles that I'm playing in my life. And if I don't have any boundaries, I'm not going to be very good at any of them, right? We all know what it feels like on Friday night to want to be there in our relationships, and to literally have no energy, and to use the whole weekend just to rebuild, just to go in and do it all over again. And so I have a couple of tips that have helped me, that have come from unexpected places, that I just want to share in the event it's helpful to you today. The first is defining what a boundary is. We kind of throw out, hey, you set a boundary. The word that goes in concert with boundary is no. The word no, saying no. And that sounds aggressive to a lot of us. And as Seema said, a ton of our audience, we've got men and women today, but women, we're reared to be accommodating. We're reared to say yes, and we're reared to do it all. We are not reared to say no, I can't do that today. No, I can't go out on this particular outing today. No, I can't be there for you. No, I can't have that one-to-one. And so, what I want to just encourage the audience to do today is to practice saying no to somebody, either this afternoon, this week. It sounds so micro, but you got to build that muscle on it. Makes your yes so much more powerful, and it gives you the energy for your yes, right? We know when we feel that drain, we've been saying yes and overgiving and giving and overgiving and giving and overgiving. And when you're left empty, you've gone too far. You haven't said no enough, and you haven't set those boundaries, right? So exercise your no and learn when you feel that drain, that fatigue, learn to recognize it as, I have been overgiving and I am accountable. I have ownership. When I started learning, I actually own what I'm saying yes and what I'm saying no to. It was so liberating for me, right? Completely liberating. And the last question I would say, because I know we've got a lot of other things here, I'm quite passionate about this, as you can probably tell, is asking yourself the question, what do I need today? So before your kids and before your partners and before your team leader and before all the people come swirling around, taking up that time in that space, ask yourself, just write down, what do I need today? Maybe it's just a healthy lunch. Right? For me, I can't tell you how many times I've done, if I could just have a healthy lunch for 30 minutes, I'd be so good. Right? So what do I need today is a brilliant question, and exercising and practicing the word no, which is counterintuitive.
I'm going to applaud that and say that there's a lot of traction in the chat for that, because I think that's a hard one for people to say. And and Lindsay, I'm going to turn to you in a second. I will say I had a really tough time with that, saying no, Sanchia. That was really hard for me. But this week, and I'm going to talk a little bit to Chelsea, who in the chat put in something around how, if you're a leader, it's easier to say no, but what if it's your boss that's asking a question? How do you say no then if you're not the leader? This week, we're for those of you who are not Henry Schein team members, we had a national sales meeting last week. A lot of us were there. I traveled for that. And I have numbers of dinners this week for work. And there was one Monday night, and I only got back Saturday night from our sales meeting, and it was a team dinner, and I really wanted to be there. I mean, I love the team, and the person I report to is going to be there. And I said to them, no, I would love to be there, but I will have nothing left to give for the rest of the week, including to this particular panel, if I don't say no tonight. So I want to be there, but the answer is no. And I think, Chelsea, sometimes you have to frame it for your supervisors. If they're saying, you have to frame the question and the conversation with them around, hey, I want to be a really good, productive team member, and I can't do that if I have nothing to give. So hopefully that answers a little bit of the question. But Lindsay, you have a really tough job in you work with our customers. I mean, and they serve patients, right? I mean, so we didn't introduce Henry Schein as a whole, but Henry Schein healthcare solutions to providers outside in the office setting, and lots of settings actually. And Sanchia will correct me if I get this wrong. So I'm going to say we're in multiple settings, healthcare provider settings. But Lindsay, you support those folks. How do you set that balance for yourself? How do you set boundaries while still maintaining that core customer integrity that I know that you do? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the thing that really comes to mind for me is just setting my priorities. I call them the big rocks. And for me, it's ensuring that I'm really focused on those really important things professionally. For instance, I will set those big rocks. What are my priorities? What strategies, things do I need to get to this week, this month, this quarter, and this year? Because so many other things in the whirlwind come into play, and it's easy to lose focus. And customers are such an important focus, but I still have all these other tasks and duties to do. So if I'm not getting those front and center for myself, I literally write them at the top of my planner. What are those big rocks? What are those priorities for me? But I also do it personally. I'm all about quality time. And I know I didn't mention it in my intro, but I have 2 kids, 9 and 12. And so, like Kristen, they are hugely important to me. And so I'm sure we have a lot of moms on the call as well. So when I think about these interactions and how to prioritize personal and professional, it's all about quality. So what are the things that I'm prioritizing personally, setting aside quality time, quality interactions? And that means my cell phone might not be in the room for those. And it's the same for my customers. I really want to be lasered in or or my team in making sure that they're getting all of me, that I'm actively listening, that I'm eliminating some of those barriers that are getting in the way of me making them feel like a priority to me when I'm in front of them. To the question that just came from the chat that you utilized, I would say, as someone who does manage people and manage teams, I want the people on my team to tell me what their boundaries are. I want them to share with me what makes them feel overwhelmed or uncomfortable or what is not working, because that then helps me better understand. And the thing is, we need to lean on our teammates. For me, it's like, sometimes when it comes to these priorities and things, maybe we don't all need to be at that same meeting. Maybe it's a divide and conquer strategy, so they're not all on a plane at the same time, or maybe for some of the people on the call that don't manage people, maybe it's having a teammate that they can rely on and feel comfortable pivoting something or a project to when maybe they're feeling overwhelmed or need a little bit of help. But yeah, it's all about, for me, just personally, professionally, identifying priorities and then just trying to stick to those and fitting all the little rocks in around those.
I love that. I once heard somebody say two expressions that come to mind, and we're going to jump to the next question. I once heard somebody say, make sure that you don't drop, if you're juggling a lot of balls, make sure you don't drop the glass ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the glass ones are usually your health, that's top priority. It could be a priority at work, your family. So really focusing in on what are those priorities that are, this is no touch zone. We have to really be able to hone in on those. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sister-in-law always tells me, disappoint the right people. So when you're having trouble saying no, disappoint the right people in your life. And that goes along with identifying who that is and what that's about. Okay, let's turn to the next question, because it goes together with this. You can't have priorities and do all this if you don't fill your cup up, right? And so I love wellness pieces and wellness culture. I think it's really important, but it can be very prescriptive. Get up early, meditate, journal, do some yoga, and then make sure you're exercising, and then you will be well. And that really one size fits all doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's got different practices that work for them, and it can look at a lot of different ways. And so I'm interested, Cynthia, I'm going to turn it to you. Is meditation something you do? What is a wellness practice that you have or wish you had? What do you wish?
Yeah, it is such a good question. And the question I would ask the audience is, do you have a self-care plan? Right? So if the answer to that question is no, one of the first actions we'd like to encourage you to take is just to sit down and think about the last time you felt some oxygen. You felt like, whew, this just feels good, right? Time alone, wherever it is. But if the answer is yes, you do have a self-care plan, what's another step? What's another thing you add into your self-care plan, right? And for me, Seema, I learned how to meditate about, 2 or 3 years ago. And, people say, oh, you just meditate, you just sit down, you just blah, blah. And it's for someone that's intense, like the majority of us on this event, right? It's hard to sit down and to be quiet. And for those of us extroverts, it's really hard to sit down and be quiet. But I ended up meeting a meditation coach in Brooklyn, who literally taught me how to be still and how to just be uncomfortably comfortable with my own thoughts, right? And that was about 2.5 years ago. It'll be 3 years in May. Team, it's just 15 minutes in the morning, and just having that time to there's no requests coming in. There's nothing coming out. I'm just sitting in silence. It's really hard to learn, but it has paid dividends, right? So for me, my self-care plan starts with meditation. I am also an avid journaler. I just love to write. Marketers, we love to write, the creative piece of this, right? But I really want to encourage who's attending today to think about a prescriptive action you can take for your own self-care plan. Maybe it's 10 minutes of exercise. Maybe it's seeing daylight, right? The daylight savings, seasonal, that affects our mental health and our well-being. So maybe it's just 10 minutes of daylight, right? Which is linked to all sorts of things. Maybe it's a call. My sister is my best friend. I have to hear her voice once a week, even if it's for 5 minutes, right? Maybe it's a call with somebody that you love that just makes you feel better. Maybe it's laughter, right? But For me, Seema, it does start in meditation. I think about it often. There's a quote that I heard, because I know we're going to hear from my other panelists here, that was really impactful from John Maxwell. And it's, in order to add value to yourself, you have to see value in yourself. In order to add value in yourself, you have to see value in yourself. You deserve this, team. You deserve the investment in yourself, right? So that's, I would just leave you with that quote and the encouragement to act. Just a small action, a 10-minute action will pay dividends in your own joy and your own well-being.
Amazing. And so I also have a meditation practice, but for those on the call, it's a practice. You know, it's not like you get to the seat and you're like, I'm clear. It's a practice of every day. And I think Sanchia tells us a couple of things. I want to shout out in the chat. A lot of you are putting in accountability partners for your self-care practices, thinking about a budget for your self-care practice. How do you overcome guilt? And I think, Sanchia, you really hammered it home. There is nothing about self-care practice that is selfish, because oftentimes, and we're going to hear from Lindsay and Kristen next, oftentimes what you're doing with your self-care practice is around giving back to others. You're feeling that so you can give it back to others in your house and your team, however you do it. So I think we have to come to a point where we leave the guilt behind. We don't need to justify ourselves as human beings. We need to care for ourselves as human beings. So let me turn Lindsay next to you. What do you do? What do you do for yourself that is sort of, is it yoga? What of these things is really resonates with you?
Oh, Seema, I wish it involved like a green smoothie and some Pilates. I joke with some of my peers. I'm like, I know I should wake up at 5:30 and race someone in something tied to an Apple Watch and all these things. But if I'm going to be honest, sometimes for me, it's that hour of sleep. It's that 5:30 to 6:30. Like I'm a person who cannot power through on 5-6 hours of sleep. Like I'm a 7-8 kind of a girl. And I think not feeling guilty about that. I think sometimes people love, it's almost like a pride thing. Like I get 5 hours of sleep every night and I power through, and I'm like, I would be cruising in on fumes. You don't want to see me on 5 hours of sleep. So for me, it's just, I try to maximize like that rest time. And I also protect my calendar on the weekends, because I try to really protect that time, because that's really where I recharge my battery as well. And that's where I have that dedicated family time. And I'm very, very fanatical about my weekend calendar and protecting that family time. So for me, I fill my cup and care for myself through sleep, as well as I love to read, but I have a hard time finding time to sit down and read. So I found Audible. And I love it. I do it while I get ready in the morning. I listen in the shower. I listen when I fold laundry. I listen in the car. And so for me, that's been something that I just really enjoy. And I enjoy having the ability to read books without having to read a book. I'm still being productive and doing all these other things, but it allows me to still read and be a part of some book clubs and stuff like that. So for me, it's really just weekends, protecting that, sleep, and Audible. And if I can fit a walk in here and there, I do that as well.
I love that. Sleep's so important. And for those of you who are night owls and need the morning sleep time, and I know that's really hard in lots of corporate settings, but I will say I did hear a sleep expert talk about how important it was to have people sleep on different cycles, because that's actually how we developed as human beings. It's genetic, so that people could protect the tribe at night. You night owls now have a calling, protecting the tribe at night. And for those folks in the morning, you were productive in the morning and you did that. So really such a key element. I'm seeing lots of people in the chat talking about protecting their sleep. So Lindsay, thank you for highlighting that for the community. Kristen, how do you recharge and create that sacred space? Because as an attorney, people are always looking to you for guidance. And unless you are centered, it's really hard to do that. So what do you do?
I wish I did all the things Sanchia and Lindsay do, but I'm not good at it, right? I'm just going to tell you, I am not good at it on a regular basis. I admit that I am kind of this stereotypical mom in that I put myself last. So I may have had a plan that I was going to squeeze the gym into my day, and then somebody needed something dropped off at school or something else happened, and I became the last one. So I'm really trying to focus on being better about that without feeling guilty about what I didn't do, right? And instead just looking forward, because I know it'll be better for me in the long run, but I can't make myself feel guilty about what I didn't do. So I've learned to try and put that behind. The one thing I would say is I've gotten a lot better about taking my time off and then really taking time off, meaning I'm going to leave my work phone in the hotel for the day and we're going to go to the beach and it's not going to be an issue. And I trust, the other members of my team to step up and, step in for me and they can handle it. And, Henry Schein is still going to exist if I went for 8 hours and I spent time with my kids and I built a sandcastle, And it took a lot of time to get there. I will tell you that was not my attitude when I first started out in my career. And it took me some time to really understand that and appreciate it. But I'm so glad that I've gotten to that point because that really fills up my bucket. And it's always having the next one planned to know that you have something else to look forward to. It is really helpful.
I love that. So the theme I'm hearing through all this is ditch the guilt and shame, ladies and allies that are on the call, because it doesn't help you do any of the things that you are tasked with doing. And so I love that you've come to that. And I think as a culture, Henry Schein has evolved into a culture of wellness. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But I do want to say there's a lot to this around creating a culture of wellness within your own teams. And so each of you leads in various ways. And I'll start with you, Lindsay. How do you set up a culture of wellness for your team? How do you model that out?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. First of all, like Kristen said, I prioritize time off. Sometimes it's a staycation, just being home with my kids for a week in the summer. For some people, it might be just, cleaning those closets out. It's just things that I, really leading by example, showing that I take time off. I go on vacation. I take a staycation. I do whatever it is throughout the year, to your point, because we simply cannot go. There's no award. There's no reward for the person who takes the least amount of vacation or PTO or all these different things. There's literally, it's not like an attendance award, like in elementary school where you get a star. And people need to see that we prioritize our time off as well, and for our teams to see. And I, first of all, I encourage them. I say, hey, what do you have coming up? I literally just yesterday said to some of my managers, spring break's coming up. Are you taking time off? If not, what do you have coming off this summer? And it was in a way to promote it. It was in a way of saying, you need to have some upcoming time off. We're in almost through the first quarter. You haven't taken any time off. What do you have coming up? So I think leading by example in that aspect, as well as, I want to bring up something that I did with my team. There have been some different instances at work where maybe we were going through a difficult time, or we were having to navigate some hard waters with our teams. And a lot of people's first reaction when they're going through something hard is I almost liken it to someone in the deep end of a pool. And when they feel like they're sort of like, looks like they're drowning, right? And they're grasping for everything. And I said, you can't do anything if that's how you feel. If that's how you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling stressed. I said, visualize yourself turning onto your back and just float for a minute. So when you find that maybe you're getting to a place where you're feeling overwhelmed, or like you're sort of doggy paddling and the water is coming here, I said, take a moment, stop, pause, literally visualize yourself and flip on your back and just float. And I'm here to help you. Tell me when you need to float and I'll know. We have a lingo now. We have that like code word, if you will. And they've literally used it with me, said, hey, I need to float for a minute. Today has been particularly hard. I'm going to take a minute to float. And then it helped me understand where they were so that I can chip in and help. But that's just one of the things I do to try to like lead by example of ways to, prioritize that time off, as well as like being open and honest with me when you just need a minute to float.
I love the permission that you're giving your team. That there's, Brene Brown talks a lot about permission slips, for those of you who read Brene, giving yourself permission slips. But Lindsay, in doing this, you're implicitly giving your team a permission slip to say, hey, my wellness is just not where it needs to be. I need to float, for your example. So I think that's really helpful. Kristen, you impact a lot of people just in the way that you carry yourself, and you have a team. How do you communicate? Are you open about your wellness needs? I mean, you did say in the beginning of the panel that you are open about your kids and what you need. So how do you navigate that? How do you set that tone for your team?
I'm honest and I keep it real. So you'll see, when I'm frazzled, you'll see, and I'll admit it, and I'll be open and real about it. There are some times where everybody needs to be, extremely professional, and other times where you're like, this is how it's going today, right? And we need to share that because everybody's stressed, right? Everybody has a lot going on. And I try and really have a connection with everybody on the team. So I am part of the legal department, but I work hand in hand with the HR team on a day-to-day basis. And the thing I would say that's most important about, wellness at work is really making sure that I know the people that I work with. So I try not to start conversations with diving right into work. No, I will ask them, about things in their life, right? How was your last vacation? How are your kids? Your parents were ill. How are they doing, right? To have a connection with those people that I work with, that's not just about the work that we're doing, I think sets the tone for everybody to kind of take the temperature down a little bit. Instead of them thinking I'm immediately going to get all over them about what they need to do, you take a step back and say, how are you doing? It really makes a difference and kind of like depressurizes the situation for everybody. So that's one of the things that I find has been most helpful.
Friendly attorneys, who would have known, only here at Henry Schein. So I love that. And I think, allowing people to be their whole selves, because you're asking about parts of their life that they don't normally bring to the table, is important. Sanchia, what do you do to ensure that your team is well? Do you, you talk about meditating. Are you openly talking about your wellness practices? Do you talk to them about what they can do? How does that work for you?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I love my team, and I can see some of them in the chat here. I feel an intense, a type of intensity that often will lead, and those of you who love what you do, you know this, right? It leads to the challenge of the balance and the boundaries, because you just love what you do. And Seema, one of the first things around wellness with my team, and Lindsay and Kristen have both hit it. We didn't coordinate, right? So I plan to hit it as well, as time off. And that lets me know that we all need to be reminded, every audience member needs to be reminded about how essential time off is. And I wrote in my notes, normalizing time off. If you're responsible for a team and you're never taking the time and letting anybody know you're taking the time, you're responding on PTO, you're not normalizing time off, right? It took me forever, as my team members who have been with me for years know, I've grown in this area, right? I used to be the one that's working all the time on time off, or only taking a day, or only taking a half day. And we really, on our team, try to take seriously this notion of well-being. And the Pulse survey lets us know if we're there or not, right? Because we can see as leaders, if we got work to do in the wellness area, if people are totally burned out on our team or not, right? And what happens, Seema, so much is you as a leader, you say, well, take time off, when really it's about modeling it, normalizing it, rewarding it, asking about those vacations, learning our team members' partners' names, their kids' names. I have moms galore on my team. I know their children's names. I've seen many of their children's beautiful faces, right? So when you take an interest beyond the result and an interest beyond the workspace, it provides a freedom that is very different and very unique, where folks can recharge, and not just recharge, can do it in advance of feeling burned out. That's the goal, right? You're taking the vacation in advance of the needing the recharge and needing the refuel. That's the ideal state. I would also just say in this area with our teams is when we're burned out and I loved, Kristen, what you said on the being transparent about when we're stressed. I certainly was transparent last week with several of my team members around the national sales meeting about feeling stressed, right? But that's fantastic. But when we are consistently burned out and consistently just moving along mechanically and clinically, our teams feel that. They can feel when we're not, even if it's virtual, they can feel when we're not listening to them, not hearing them. And as leaders, it is our responsibility to remove the obstacles for our team and to encourage our team and to notice and recognize and specifically understand the contributions. If we have no energy, we can't lead in the way that we were destined to lead and called to lead, right? So it's taken me some time, Seema, to realize in the normalization of time off, how that contributes to the quality of leader I can show up as and be, right? So anyway, those are just a few of my wrapping thoughts, because I thought both Kristen and Lindsay really hit it home.
I don't have emojis here like on Teams. We do hearts and like stars and stuff, but all of you get all of those hearts for me. I loved everything that you said, and I will say I have had those moments where I have walked into meetings and known I should have canceled that meeting because I wasn't in the right frame and space to host it, to be there. One of my team members is quietly sitting here over here, and he was a part of one of those meetings where I was like, I apologize to you all. I actually should have canceled this meeting. I am burnt out, and it wasn't productive. I wasn't a productive team leader. So I love, Sanchia, what you said, because for those of you on the call, you're leaders in some space in your life. I really want to make this clear because I know people are like, well, I'm not a leader. You are. You lead your family. You lead your friends. You lead your teams. You lead yourself. And if you are not in a good mental health space because you're burnt out, you're tired, whatever, you can't be that kind of leader. So instead of feeling guilty about it, remind yourself that there's a real reason behind it, that we do these things. So I love that. I'm seeing a lot of questions and different pieces in the chat. We're going to get to some of the questions in the chat in a minute. I want to ask this question, though, because Sanchia, you mentioned the Pulse global survey, which we do to get the employee feedback and the voice of our employee. So important. Henry Schein does a lot of things. We launched a wellness committee chaired by our Chief Human Resources Officer, Lorelei McGlynn, and we really focus in on what can we do to develop a culture of wellness for the organization. I mean, how do we do it? And this team on the call knows we just launched a quiz on finding out your own burnout type. So TSMs who are following along today or in the chat, I encourage you to take the quiz because it's not about whether or not you're burnout. It's about what type of burnout you might experience or why you experience that burnout. What's your personality type towards burnout? So take that quiz. But Kristen, I want to turn to you. You are also a key member of our wellness committee. What do we do as Henry Schein that helps support your wellness? Is it connecting you to people? I mean, how do you find that Henry Schein works together with you for this?
First of all, we do a lot, for a Fortune 300 company, we do a lot to make sure and focus on the wellness of our TSMs. But I would say my personal favorite, now that I'm hybrid and I only go into the office one day a week, one of the best things that Seema's team does is actually coordinate connection days. So they're generally theme days that we have in the office. I missed out on brunch this morning, which I was pretty bummed about. But for example, the last month was the great Henry Schein Bake Off. And it really brought a lot of people together. And it really is the best day. I mean, I've been at the company 17 years. I know a lot of people. It's a day of going in and walking around and be like, oh, I missed you. I haven't seen you in so long. Hugs and stopping to talk. And it's not exactly the most productive day work-wise. But, I saw in the chat, somebody said it's like filling your bucket. It's like my bucket overflows with Henry Schein excitement on those days. It's all the people that I really enjoy working with that I may see only on a screen and get to see in person. And it gives us a chance to just make those, quick connections that we really need to kind of keep us going and keep us connected. So those are one of the things that I really appreciate.
Well, thank you for that, shout out. I appreciate it. And to the team who is running one right now and couldn't be on this call, I will send that to them. I think they really enjoy getting people together. Lindsay, for you, how does Henry Schein help, maintain your wellness? Is it flex time off, paid parental leave? What works for you from our team?
Yeah. Unlike Kristen, I don't live near some of our offices, like in Melville and things like that. I would 100% be at brunch if that were the case. But I feel like Henry Schein does a wonderful job for those of us that don't live in Melville or near one of those main offices for those. And one of the things, and I don't know if we necessarily loop it under wellness, but our employee resource groups, our ERGs, are a wonderful way to create community and wellness by being with other like-minded individuals. And we have ERGs that cover many different areas and create communities for many different people. But just being a part of those, and we continue to grow them. Like every so often I see we're adding one, and it just makes me smile and it makes me happy because it brings people from around the globe together for things that we're passionate about and just creates a community that otherwise we wouldn't have. But yes, other than that, obviously the paid time off. I didn't have my babies here at Henry Schein. I had them previous to coming here. But the fact that we have maternity and paternity leave, I would have absolutely loved paternity leave for my husband at that time, because it's such a time when moms do need help. So the fact that Henry Schein has a really robust maternity and paternity leave, I think, is wonderful as well.
Thank you for that. And I saw something about spouses and partners supporting us so we can do the work that we do. That is part of what we do with the paid parental leave. It allows all sorts of partners to get together and help support their partner when they're going through maternity leave or leave just caring for an infant. My infants are now 18 years old and 16 years old, so not infants anymore, but babies in my eyes nonetheless. Sanchia, what do we do as an organization that helps support your wellness? We have Steps for Suicide Prevention. We have a lot of different programming out there on wellness. Is there anything in particular that works for you?
Yeah, I will say, team, and I know we have a lot of leaders that are outside of Henry Schein on with us today. We have an employee assistance program, and I'm sure many of you have counseling services that are a part of your HR programming. And just being a part of our medical group, the trends related to mental and behavioral health, of which suicidal ideation is a part of, are insanely alarming in this country. I'm sure globally, but in this country. And so, the CDC has said 1 out of 3 adults has experienced a depressive episode, right? Every 12 months, one out of 3 adults is experiencing that rate of depression. And to work for a company that has a formal program that can connect our teammates to psychiatrists, complementary, to give our entire teams the assistance that we need, depending on what happens. It's not just mental health, there's also financial resources. I think, Seema, to recognize the whole individual and to know that, outside of our functional deliverables, that we're whole people and that things happen to us in our lives that affect how we show up. That employee assistance program has been huge for me to see as a team leader and as an individual Team Schein member, to know that Henry Schein cares about my whole self. It's just so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I can't overstate enough how much feedback we get from the Steps for Suicide Prevention programming and from our EAP partners. And we have a lot of partners out there that work with us. I really think it's such a meaningful part of wellness at Henry Schein. It's a hard topic. People don't really like to talk about it, which is why we broach it here. So, because we don't want, as an organization, anyone to suffer in silence. Whether they're suffering or their family and loved ones are suffering, I mean, it is a very real part of today's society. So thank you for bringing that up. I know it's a tough topic to cover, but I think so meaningful and important for so many. And normalizing the conversation around it, so important too, which is what all of you are doing today, is normalizing the conversation around health. We have some questions in the chat, and I want to get to some of those before we kind of wrap. So one of the questions we had is, do you take time in the middle of your day, if you can, to do stuff that is for your wellness? So taking a walk, or do you schedule lunchtime? I mean, how do you, in the middle of your day, do that? Or do you find that to be unacceptable because you need to be on calls? And do you feel guilty about that? Can you talk us through that? And I'm going to answer this question too, but I want to turn it to our panelists. Any one of you can jump in.
I do when I can. So I think that, especially when it's nice outside in New York and in the summer, then I'll take that time and I'll say, okay, I'm going to take 40 minutes to go for a run, right? So if I took an hour and 15 minutes for lunch that day, right, that was okay. And that was good. And I know I feel that much better that I actually got up from my chair and did something. Does it happen every day? No, but I try and do it when I can and try and fit that time within my schedule and say that, that was something that I had to do for me and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah, Lindsay.
Oh, I was just going to say, I actually, coming off of our national sales meeting where we were all together, one of the things I talked about with my leadership team was the fact that I think at times we're getting teams fatigue. So we moved to Teams post-pandemic, and it has so many wonderful things that we can see each other, just like right now. We're having interactions with people living all over. But as someone leading the team, and at times I'm the one generating those meetings, I'm the one inviting people to the Teams call. I told my team, I said, look, I feel like I'm going to start thinking to myself before I initiate a Teams call, thinking, could this be a phone call, like old school cell phone, or could this be an email? And I think the people who are generating these invites and generating these Teams meetings, we've gotten so used to everything is on Teams that the fact that it doesn't really provide that person on the other end to maybe be eating lunch at the same time. Maybe they don't want to eat lunch on camera. Maybe it would allow them to walk and talk for 30 minutes. If it's not something where I'm sharing my screen or I'm requiring, note taking or something like that, maybe that conversation could be them taking a walk in the summer while also downloading on something. So I committed to them that I would be protecting what calls I put on the calendar as a Teams call and thinking about if that's actually necessary versus a different method that we could communicate.
Oh, the chat is really loving your Teams fatigue comment because I think it resonates with a lot of folks, myself included. What about you, Sanchia? Do you take time in the day to do stuff for yourself ever?
I was just going to quickly add the notion of non-negotiables. So I mentioned my sister earlier. It's a non-negotiable for me. I have to hear her voice once a week. And it's usually cannot be in the evening time because she's got 2 girls. And it's got to be somewhere during the day. So a non-negotiable for me is I'm going to be connecting with my sister, right? And it's probably going to be sometime during lunch at some point during the week. It's non-negotiable. I'm not negotiating on it, right? So just think about what might be non-negotiable for you and add it into your discipline throughout the week.
I love that I have a non-negotiable and it's lunch. And it's not because I get hangry, by the way, which is what I think most people would assume. But I have some health conditions. And when I don't eat, I exasperate those health conditions. And I did that for a really long time in the beginning of the pandemic. A sidebar, I also lead government relations and partner on government relations as a part of the work I do. And so obviously during the pandemic, that was really big for a company like Henry Schein with PPE. So I will say I really went through a time where I just ate at random times. Whenever I could grab a meal, I would eat. And it did not do my body any good. And so now lunchtime is non-negotiable, which means even right now it's lunch, 12 to 1, but I have taken time after this to make sure I have time for lunch because that's non-negotiable and everybody knows. I do want to address something that was in the calendar based on what you all said, which is people don't respect my calendar. I have it and they just put it's blocked off for lunch and people just put Teams meetings on everywhere anyway. How do you deal with that? What do you do with that? Do you just decline them?
Transparently, if it's my boss, I accept the meeting and, I'm going to move along, right? However, I typically, even with him, can say, hey, I had a pre-existing appointment here. Because what if it's not just like, you're going for a walk for 30 minutes? What if it is an appointment that you need to get to that's personally important to you, right? And I typically just say I had a pre-existing commitment And it typically 9 out of 10 times works. But sometimes we have to accommodate and be flexible.
That's great. I mean, having that conversation with your the person you report to, also really important. That's coming up in the chat a lot. How do I have that conversation? So I think these tips are helpful. Lindsay, what about you?
Oh, I was just going to say, sometimes I'll respond back like, oops, you must have not seen, I'm already booked at that time, and kind of make it like a little playful, but I'm like, feel free to check my calendar. I have other openings today, so it's also just creating a boundary. Please check my calendar, check the open. Now, again, Sanchia, sometimes if it's our boss, like that's a little bit different, and it might be urgent and important. But for some of those other things that could be pivoted, moved to a different open time or a different day altogether, I don't hesitate to just respond back and say, oh, sorry, double booked at that time. Please check my availability. Find anything that's open today or tomorrow. Please feel free to snag. And I try to push back on that and respect the times that I'm either booked for something as frivolous as eating lunch or a meeting. Either way, it's important to me, and I try to hold those boundaries to those meetings that are on my calendar.
That's great. Kristen, any advice from you about what to do here?
Yeah, I think, like we've said before, honesty, right? Push back. But I will tell you, my calendar is literally blocked for the entire year and nobody cares. And so I need to make sure that I ask my administrative assistant to be my partner in crime here, right? She knows that there are certain times, if I tell her, well, I can't take appointments then, right? Do not accept appointments. And we find ways to say to someone, is this something that, to Lindsay's point, that could be handled in an email? Do you really need a meeting for this, right? Email me first, and then I'll tell you, ooh, yeah, that's something we really need to discuss. Let's set up some time. Otherwise, it's, oh, no, you're good to go. Go ahead, right? A lot of people just have this tendency to send meeting appointments and put themselves on your calendar when it's really not necessary. So we push back a lot. I'm not shy anymore about saying, do we really need a meeting for this? And does it have to be at that time? I can't accommodate you at 12:30, but I can be available at 3:30, at 5:30, tomorrow morning at 8:30. What works for you? I've gotten less shy about pushing back.
I think that's really important. We can all be a little bit less shy about pushing back. And one of the questions in the chat was around being a part of a global team. And so you're supposed to be available all the time. And the answer is you really can't be available all the time. But to Kristen's point, you can offer moments of availability that work for everybody. So I think it's a question of standing a little bit in your own power and understanding that you can say, hey, I need to do this. And so I have other times and opportunities to be able to connect with you. I know there's a question about partners in the team and how you work with your partner on making sure that there's time for yourself. Maybe I could just ask that really quick, and then we are closing in. This went fast. So how do you, and maybe Lindsay, I'm going to ask you this because you do travel for work and you do have the kids and you have a lot going on. How do you work with your partner on timing? I mean, how do you co-lead your house in this way?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm lucky in that my husband doesn't travel for his job, but he also has a job that he can't miss a day of work unannounced. And so because of that, I have created a village, and I'm lucky in that I live in where I grew up, in the state that I grew up in. And when I started having kids, my parents moved up. So I've created a village and a community of people that help support me through my career and support me with travel and meetings and things that come up. Today, my mom's pinch hitting. I have a full afternoon, so she's picking up the kids for me. I also have a street of moms that we all chip in, and whether it's friends, family, whatever you need or whomever you rely on, you really have to have that village of people. And I'm there to help them as well. But there's times when we're like, ooh, my meeting went over. Can you go grab Harper off the bus? I'm not going to be there. And she's expecting me, and we're texting each other, we're helping each other out. So that's been really helpful to me, but I honestly couldn't do it without that village of people.
Yeah, I think one quote that I heard that really has just resonated with me is that resilience lives in community. It is not something we have by ourselves. And so the fact that, this was even a question, I get it. It's a communal effort with maybe to your point, it's not your partner, maybe it's other people. So Kristen, maybe you have some insights you could share with us on that.
Yeah, I mean, we try and communicate and make sure we share things on our calendar. So I have a work dinner tonight, so I made sure my husband gets the same appointment, right, to show that I need him to be home at that time because I can't be. And so we make sure that we're always communicating what's going on to make sure that somebody covers. And that's hard. It really is on a day-to-day basis, but it's something that we just communicated to. This is our expectation. We kind of to make it work. We have to, take stock every day, right? Who's going to be home at what time? Who's getting the kids? Who's got this together? And that's how we try and make it work.
Yeah, I'm going to say I dropped the ball yesterday. My husband forgot that I was working late. I forgot that he was working late. My daughter texts, "Hey, I'm ready to be picked up from school." And I was like, oh my God. So the Uber app is a really good app for you to be able to use right now. And I'm not going to lie, for me, sometimes the village includes an Uber app, a DoorDash app, an Instacart app. There's lots of apps out there that I lean on whatever I can to get that done. So I appreciate the communication. Sanchia, how do you work with your partner to make sure that you have time and space to charge and do what you need to?
Yeah, team. So my husband is hysterical. He's a very comical person. I always tell him he could have gone into comedy. So as you're kind of going around here, I'm just laughing at some of the things he would say because he's just a whole ball of laughs, right? So Seema, we have those same disconnects. And I would say the main disconnect we have is he's my front line. Like our partners in medical, we talk a lot about nurses being the front line. Like our partners are the front line. So they often get the consequences of not doing the radical self-care, not having the non-negotiables, not saying no, right? And so my husband will tell me, and guys, this is super casual, but we're friends now. I can see the chat, it's all good. He'll say, "You are doing the most. You are doing the absolute most this week," right? And that's my flag for, okay, we need some time. And so we navigate our way through laughter, Seema, and through trying. He helps me not take myself too seriously, right? And there's a lot of patience involved, So, and we celebrate small wins, right? I take a half day off. He's like, "That's awesome. You took a half day. I'm so proud of you," right? So, but no, it's laughter can get you through pretty much anything, I do believe.
I love that. We have only 4 minutes left, and so I'm making an executive decision. We had a piece in here that was, what advice do you have for others in the workplace? But I think this other piece is more important. So Fairy Godboss has a tradition of celebrating each individual woman in particular, because we don't like to celebrate ourselves. It's uncomfortable, and we don't like to talk about it. So I'm going to ask each of you to talk about it, just so we're modeling as a panel. Tell me something that you are proud of for yourself that you achieved. And I am going to kick it off with Kristen Kapoor. Tell me something that you're proud of.
So I struggled with this one. I told Sanchia just before we started, I said, this one was really hard for me. Whether you call it imposter syndrome or something else, right? I say, I didn't cure cancer. I haven't done anything extraordinary. What do I have to share? But I thought about it. And one of the things I'm really proud of is I feel like after many years of my professional career, I feel like I've maintained a good amount of perspective, right, about what's important. I may not have found the right balance, but I know what's important to me. I try and make decisions, right, with that in mind always, right, whether it's taking the time off, what do I need to do tonight, right, at the end of each day, did I really focus on what I thought was, most important to me. So I would say that that's one of my bigger accomplishments, personally and professionally.
Amazing, because that's something to be proud of every day, Kristen, and I love that. Lindsay, turning to you, and then Sanchia, I want you to close us out.
We were kind of joking to Kristen's point before, and I said I coordinated a Costco same-day delivery, a shipped delivery, and I cooked 2 pounds of bacon for dinner last night for my family. That was my accomplishment for the day. But no, I think it's just juggling all the things. Like, no, I hope that the one thing that we have shown by being vulnerable and talking through this is we are all a work in progress. We're learning. We've had some personal or professional accomplishments, but the things I'm most proud of are my personal accomplishments and the way that I have continued through my career to value quality interactions with my family, keeping them at my core, not hiding them from my work family, but placing them front and center and making it very aware that they are my first main priority. Everything else will come in second. And that's what I'm most proud of. And that's what I will always be most proud of, is just the fact that I've been able to maintain a career and a family while at Henry Schein, which has allowed me to do both.
Awesome. Sanchia, take us home.
So we're right at time. My micro moment of pride came from my 14-year-old niece responding to me saying I was nervous about something, nervous about a presentation, which was last week. She stood up from the breakfast table and said, "Let me tell you why it's going to work out, Auntie. You have confidence, you're smart, and you can project." And I'm like, oh my God, this is everything. Okay, I love you. So it's those micro moments with my nieces, Seema, that just, they make me naturally high. And cheers to all the wonderful accomplishments coming in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, Fairy God Boss community, for being with us today. Thank you, TSMs, who've joined us today. Thank you to my wonderful panelists. I am proud to be here with you, and I would leave you all with a sense of, please be well, take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you for joining us today.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.